We're back to check out more from Napoleon. We're circling back to a time period that we skipped over.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a gap and we were a little bit confused.
Yeah, we had done 4 videos, and then you guys had started dropping into those comments and saying, oh, there's the Napoleon in Italy, Battle of Lodi, 1796 is the one that we're doing here. And we need to go back to those so we can get more background information onto what actually happened. So that's what we're doing now. I know it's been a little while since we've gotten to one of these Napoleon videos, and that's because there's so much history out there, guys. So we're going to continue on the path of Napoleon, but we're not going to do it every single week like we were doing before. We're going to sprinkle it in periodically with other history videos or military-based content alongside our normal music, comedy, sports.
There's just so much content out there to do.
Yeah, we want to have some diverse historical content. So you can expect more Napoleon videos for sure. Just don't expect them every single week. But we are excited to come back to Napoleon because he's been such an enigmatic figure, and we
impressive.
Learned about some of his tactical abilities thus far, and his seemingly consistent manner in which he is able to take on these battles and do it in such a way that has never been done before, right?
Yeah, and these videos are incredible the way that they're put together. Like, they're just so engaging and they teach you so much in such a short time. So I've been loving them.
Great detail. Anyways, let's get into this one. It's 26 minutes, so let's not wait any longer. The Battle of Lodi, 1796.
An Epic History TV BMF Productions collaboration. In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign and the dawn of a new age.
Dun, dun, dun. The Little Corporal.
1792. Europe is plunged into conflict by revolution in France. At first, it seems this infant republic will be quickly snuffed out by her neighbors. Incredibly, France clings on, thanks to mass mobilization, patriotic fervor, and her traditional military power. In 1795, France occupies the Low Countries, while Prussia and Spain withdraw from the war. But the French Republic still faces a powerful coalition of enemies, which includes the Austrian Empire and kingdoms of Piedmont, Sardinia, Naples, and Great Britain, as well as a counter-revolutionary revolt in the Vendée region of western France. In Paris, the most extreme revolutionaries had been toppled, sent to the guillotine, as they had sent so many before them. France is now governed by the Directory, a more moderate 5-man committee, which quickly wins a reputation for corruption and inefficiency.
Some things don't change.
Nevertheless, in 1796, they plan a major military offensive to knock their most dangerous adversary, Austria, out of the war. The two main efforts will be made along the Rhine by powerful armies under General Jourdan and General Moreau. A third effort, of which much less is expected, will be made in northern Italy. The French Army of Italy is a poor cousin, starved of money and supplies, stripped of troops to reinforce French forces on the Rhine. But its fortunes are about to change. On the 2nd of March, 1796, the Directory appoint a new commander to lead the army, one of France's youngest generals, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Are you gonna get yourself one of those hats? that Napoleon's wearing?
I mean, they're pretty badass. I'm not going to lie.
It's crazy to see the military uniforms, how they've changed, but
Yeah.
they are similar in some sense, like from the 1940s that we've seen. And, even to today, you have this uniform presence
It
that
looks so professional and like regal almost.
yeah, but it's supposed to be professional in that respect,
Yeah.
right? Because you're supposed to be respected.
Yes.
And that's what you see that picture of Napoleon standing there. It's like respect,
Yes.
that's what it gives off, right?
It does.
And it's interesting how he said the commander of Italy at this point, right? Not the commander of France,
Yeah.
right? General of France. Obviously, we know he grows into being the leadership force for the French. But, at this point, because we're traveling back in time. So I'm trying
I almost had to remember that, like, this is like in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Not like, because I was initially thinking, well, hasn't he already advanced? You know what I mean? But we're going back in
he's
time
working
a
his
little
way
bit.
up, I think, at
Yes.
this point, right?
Yeah.
A general's most important talent is to know the mind of the soldier and gain his confidence. He is not a machine that must be made to move. He is a reasonable being who needs leadership.
Napoleon arrives at the Army of Italy's headquarters in Nice on the 25th of March. He is just 26 years old. 2 years have passed since he masterminded French victory at the Siege of Toulon.
That was our first video.
Since then, his fortunes have been mixed. A short spell as artillery commander in Italy, 10 days in jail when his political patrons fell from power. He then refused to serve in the Vendée, fighting French counter-revolutionaries, leading to several months' unemployment in Paris. Then, an extraordinary break. 13 Vendémiaire, Paris. A royalist mob threatens to storm the national government. Napoleon is the closest general to hand and put in charge of its defense.
Here we go.
He disperses the crowds with brutal efficiency and is acclaimed savior of the revolution. A grateful Directory promotes Napoleon to General of Division and awards him command of the Army of Italy. On the 9th of March, he marries his great love, Joséphine de Beauharnais, and leaves for the front 2 days later. There are French generals in Italy with a better claim to command than Napoleon. Serrurier, a professional soldier who first saw action in the 7 Years' War, a decade before Napoleon was born.
Wow.
Augereau, a tough, experienced soldier, bold tactician, and committed Republican. And Massena, risen from the ranks, fearless, tireless, hero of the Battle of Lodi against the Austrians the year before. All three would later become marshals of Napoleon's empire. For now, Napoleon seems to these veterans young and underqualified, a political appointment, embarrassingly infatuated with his new wife. But there is something about the Corsican. As Massena observed, his small size and puny face did not put him in their favor. But as soon as he donned his general's hat, he seemed to grow by 2 feet. Napoleon impresses above all with his tireless energy, and he has much to do. His army is organized into Massena's advance guard of 2 divisions, one led by a hard-fighting Swiss general La Harpe, and the other by Meunier, whom Napoleon soon decides is incompetent. The main body comprises the divisions of Augereau, Serrurier, and 2 smaller divisions under Macquart and Garnier. The cavalry is led by General Stengel. But the Army of Italy has been shockingly neglected by the Directory. The men are hungry and unpaid, with a few units on the verge of mutiny. Some men don't even have shoes or muskets.
That's crazy.
Napoleon inspects the troops and studies reports. He enforces discipline and breaks up rotten units. He is assisted by his aide-de-camp, Junot, Marmont, and a dashing cavalry colonel, Joachim Murat.
Dashing.
As emperor, Napoleon will make 2 of these men dukes and one a king.
Wow.
His most valuable assistant is his new chief of staff, General Berthier, who helps him to reorganize the army's supply system and scour southern France for food, transport, and forage. The situation begins to improve. But Napoleon knows what will really rejuvenate his ragged divisions: victory in battle and the promise of plunder.
Maybe some shoes.
What's that?
Said, and maybe some shoes.
Yeah, you think that, having shoes would be a bare necessity to be performing well in the ranks of the army, but apparently not up to this point, up until Napoleon came about. And you see him institute leadership roles right away that are going to transform the capabilities and ensuring that the people that are participating in about to go to war are taken care of, right? Because if they're not going to perform. They're not going to be motivated. As he said, as they were saying there, a victory is obviously going to boost their morale. But in order to get to the victory, you have to make sure that they're set up for success. Mm-hmm. And so right away, you can see some of the leadership coming through.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy. Like, it really highlights his leadership skills because, like they were saying, he came into this position and nobody was really respecting him or thinking he deserved to be there at first. So not only do you have to overhaul the entire system of the army, right? Like rejig the battalions and the who's leading that and all of that. You have to get these people to listen to you to do that, right? So people aren't respecting you at first, and then you also want to change literally everything. So it just shows how great of a leader he was, that he was able to put all that into action, and then seems relatively quickly. And then you can just see that when they said that once he put on his hat, he seemed like 2 feet taller. So it's like, at first they were like, oh, like, yeah, who's this guy? But then once they saw, like they said, his energy and his ability to lead, they're like, all right, this guy means business.
Yeah. And all these visuals are really, really cool. The depictions here, the artwork has been fantastic.
Yeah.
The promise of plunder.
Honor, glory, and riches.
He sure knows how to
Napoleon
give a good
has
speech.
spent 2 years studying the situation in northern Italy and the history of past wars here. He has developed clear plans on how the campaign must be fought. Now, he will put them into action.
Let's go.
Napoleon, with 38,000 troops, outnumbers the Piedmontese and the Austrian army. But if they combine, he will be outnumbered, so he must prevent this at all costs. His plan bears all the hallmarks of what will become known as the Napoleonic art of war. A bold, rapid advance, not against the expected target, Genoa, but Dago. Here he will occupy the central position and prize his enemies apart. He knows that when threatened, the Piedmontese will retreat on their capital Turin, the Austrians on Milan. With his enemies divided, unable to support each other,
Can attack them.
he can defeat each in detail.
Nice.
Napoleon's plan will be aided by the fragility of the Austro-Piedmontese alliance. They regard each other with deep distrust after years of rivalry. The new Austrian commander, General Beaulieu, is experienced and was once considered energetic, but he is now 70 years old and does not know Italy. He is convinced the French will target Genoa, the port used by the British to supply their coalition allies. So much so that he rejects Piedmontese plans for close cooperation. Their troops remain scattered across mountain passes in a general defense against invasion.
Good luck.
On the 4th of April, Napoleon moves his headquarters forward to Albenga in preparation for his offensive. But Beaulieu strikes first. On the 10th of April, Austrian troops take Voltri to disrupt the expected French attack on Genoa. The small French garrison falls back to join Massena's advance guard at Savona. But Beaulieu's fixation with Genoa is playing into Napoleon's hands. Dago, with its vital crossroads that link the Piedmontese and Austrian armies, is covered by just 8,000 men of Argenteau's corps. Mountainous terrain means Beaulieu can only march to Argenteau's aid via Acqui, more than 20 miles to the north. What's more, Argenteau has orders to take French positions at Montenotte as a diversion for the attack at Voltri. But the French cling on courageously. Corporal Roache particularly distinguishes himself, exposing himself to enemy fire to shoot down on the enemy. His commander, Colonel Rampont, tells his men, "Here we must conquer or die," a moment which quickly enters French military folklore. It's the perfect setup for Napoleon. The enemy's attention is focused on Voltri, and Argenteau's corps has been left dangerously exposed. He swings into action, sending La Harpe's division to reinforce Rampont's troops, while Massena makes a tough night march across steep ravines in rain and fog to turn Argenteau's right flank. By dawn, the Austrians are outnumbered, outflanked, and under heavy attack. They retreat in disarray. Napoleon orders Massena to move on Dago, while he turns his attention to the Piedmontese. But Augereau's advance gets held up at Cosseria. The old castle is held by Piedmontese and Croatian grenadiers. The French launch frontal attacks into withering fire and suffer hundreds of casualties. When the colonel of the 18th Demi Brigade is killed, a 26-year-old Louis Gabriel Suchet takes over command. "I have never seen fire like it," wrote Marmont, Napoleon's aide-de-camp. Despite heroic resistance, the hopelessly outnumbered garrison surrenders the next day. With Serrurier's division also advancing from the south, Piedmontese commander General Colli has little choice but to abandon his position at Montezemolo. The same day,
so many moving pieces here. It's wild, and the detail that they have in this video again is insane.
One thing that always just strikes me as amazing in this is how they do this so fast, when at this time, like, the only mode of communication was like literally delivering a handwritten letter,
And the
or
only-
like speaking to somebody in person.
The only method of transportation was walking or horses.
Yeah, right. So it's like, you know, he's getting a message to this place where you need to attack them here because we're going to be doing this. And it's like everything is delayed by, you know, whether it be a couple hours, a couple days, like there's no instant communication.
Well, the tactics are also so important because of the mode of transportation, right? You know, the time frame of a night or, you know, hours even could be the difference between winning or losing, right?
Yeah.
Like we saw that they had to go around and through ravines and through the fog and rain and mud and all this other stuff. It's like you get held up here, you get held up there. We've talked about before being so fatigued.
If messages get intercepted, like if somebody, you know, stops that person and
yeah, and then
doesn't allow the message to get there.
All of those factors, right, are combined with the fact that, you know, we have at one point, there's one battle that is going to draw some troops away and another battle is going to draw other troops away. And because those two instances are taking place, it weakens another, you know, chess piece on the board, right? And you've got so many moving chess pieces all at one time. You've got three different forces in this one, and they're all vying for the territory in different ways. And, you know, these tactics, you see how important they are and how much of a difference it can make if you, as we saw in the beginning, like how genius that is, right, from Napoleon to let's go to the center.
So you have to separate them.
Right. And then we can, you know, move from there. We can position ourselves successfully once we start to break apart that, you know, potential alliance.
As long as they don't both come crashing in on you
at the same time.
Yes.
Right. But he's, like I said, that comes back to, you know, we saw in Genoa, you know, that taking place has led that group of troops to think, oh, that's the important part of the tactical the tactical component that's most important is right here, and that's
like
not
they're
the
all
case.
playing checkers and he's playing chess.
Yeah, it's really crazy just to see, you know, when we dive into the details here of all the moving parts all happening at one time, and then you start to understand how tactically efficient Napoleon really was.
Yeah.
Also advancing from the south, Piedmontese commander General Colli has little choice but to abandon his position at Montezemolo. The same day, under Napoleon's watchful eye, Massena takes Dago. But while La Harpe's division moves off to reinforce Augereau, hungry French troops left in Dago turn to plunder and pillage. No one spots Colonel Vukasovic, a tough Croatian commander, approaching with 3,000 reinforcements. He attacks at dawn, routing the French and retaking Dago with ease.
Wow.
It requires the recall of La Harpe's division and another day of heavy combat before Vukasovic can be driven out of Dago.
The other thing I was going to mention is just like this scenery of them fighting on this hill, and we like see castles and stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy because you don't picture it that way. You know what I'm saying? Like it's in 1796. So we obviously have no idea what things look like in 1796 other than what you've seen in movies or whatever, right?
A bayonet charge led by 27-year-old Colonel Lannes wins particular praise from General Bonaparte. Napoleon has won 3 victories in 4 days. The marches and battles have been grueling, but he has achieved his first objective. The Austrians are regrouping at Acqui and will soon retreat to Alessandria. They can offer no support to the Piedmontese. And so General Colli orders another withdrawal to a strong defensive position behind the Corsalia River. Napoleon orders an immediate attack. Augereau's division on the right, Serrurier on the left, Massena in support. But the French, under heavy fire, struggle to cross the swollen river with its steep banks. When Serrurier's troops finally get into San Michele, they immediately begin looting the town and are thrown out by a counterattack. Despite his success, Colli is still heavily outnumbered and fears encirclement. The following evening, he begins a covert withdrawal to Mondovì. But Napoleon is not deceived by the fake campfires. Patrols confirm his suspicions. The Piedmontese are pulling back. Though his troops are exhausted, wet and hungry, he launches them after the fleeing enemy. Colli's troops are caught before they can establish a new defensive line. The brave and popular General Dicat is killed. Retreat turns to rout. The French enter Mondovì in triumph, where at last, briefly, they can eat and rest.
Wow.
The two armies which lately attacked you in full confidence now fly before you in terror.
General Colli, his defeated troops scattered and demoralized, requests an armistice. Napoleon declines as his troops descend from the mountains into the fertile plain of Piedmont. Destitute and starved, French soldiers now plunder the Italian countryside freely. Brigadier General Joubert is among those frustrated by the men's conduct. Everything would go very well if the soldiers did not abandon themselves to pillage. Not a day passes without some looters being shot. Despite this severity, the mania doesn't stop. The rural folk are arming themselves. Napoleon condemns such behavior, but his orders have limited impact, especially as everyone knows Generals Massena and Augereau to be two of the greatest offenders. On the 25th of April, French troops enter Carrasco, just 30 miles south of the Piedmontese capital, Turin. Meanwhile, General Beaulieu is at long last marching to Piedmont's aid, but he is a week late. And when he learns that Piedmont has opened negotiations with the enemy, he withdraws his troops in disgust, planning to take up new positions along the Po River. Austrian troops join in the plunder of Piedmontese villages as they go. Victor Amadeus III, King of Piedmont Sardinia, sees no option but to accept Bonaparte's terms for an armistice. Piedmont must give up the strategic fortresses at Cuneo and either Alessandria or Tortona, leaving the country virtually defenseless. The final peace treaty, signed 3 weeks later in Paris, cedes Nice and Savoie to France and grants free passage to French armies. Napoleon has ended the 4-year war with Piedmont in less than 3 weeks.
Wild.
That's crazy.
Just one battle base, well, not one battle, but one main area of territory, and just destroys them through tactical awareness, and it just changes the whole map for France, basically.
It's also so crazy when you think about how he even got into that position, because he was unemployed, they said, for a relatively long time, and then he ended up just being in the right place at the right time. And when
For the second time.
Yeah, when that Paris situation happened, and because he handled that well, they're like, all right, this is your reward, and then all of this happened. So it's like, you know, he was in the right place at the right time and got rewarded, but look at the reward that they in turn got by putting him in this position, right?
Yeah, it's also interesting seeing his desire to not have the troops pillage as they were, you know, winning these battles, because you're trying to walk a fine line to keep your troops motivated. You know, why are they doing why are they doing what they're doing, right? You know, risking their lives. What are they doing it for? There has to be some glory in it for them, type deal. So you're trying to balance that, but then you see, I think, his political acumen rising here, because he's him alongside some of these generals who they said in the beginning ended up being a big part of his entourage later. They are all kind of aware that they can't conduct themselves this way if they want to govern a people, right? If they don't want to have resistance rising up against them, and they want people to look at them probably as liberators rather than conquerors. And so it's just interesting that he had such awareness, and seemingly a few of them at a young age were the ones to be like, no, like we need to carry ourselves a little bit differently here, guys. So I don't know, you know, how accurate that is, because sometimes they rewrite history to make people sound better. But
and they also said, even though he did say that, like, it's not like it really heeded much influence, because people were just doing what they wanted anyways.
Right. But I mean, and that's from that standpoint, he can't be in every place all at once, right?
That's fair.
And what are you going to do? Like, you're going to start shooting your own troops? You're not going to do that, right? So it's just interesting to hear that mindset, and whether it's factual or not, who knows, but it was interesting.
Piedmont in less than 3 weeks.
6 victories in a fortnight. You have done nothing.
The army of Italy has little time to rest on its laurels. 4 days later, having received 7,000 reinforcements and fresh supplies, it's on the move again. Napoleon plans to invade the rich province of Lombardy, ruled by the Emperor of Austria, and defeat Beaulieu's army. But first he must cross the Po River, which is closely watched by Austrian forces. It will prove one of Napoleon's most brilliant maneuvers. Massena is ordered to make conspicuous preparations to cross the river near Sale, assembling boats and building gun batteries. Meanwhile, Napoleon has formed a new elite brigade, 5,000 grenadiers, carabiniers, and chasseurs, to act as the army's advance guard under the command of General d'Allemagne. This force is ordered to march rapidly east to Piacenza and cover 40 miles in just 36 hours. They are followed by La Harpe's division, then Augereau and the cavalry. Beaulieu receives reports that French troops are moving east and begins to redeploy his forces, while remaining conscious that there are still French troops that might cross the Po as far west as Valença. This uncertainty makes it impossible for him to concentrate his forces. What's more, he's completely underestimated the scale and speed of Napoleon's move. The French advance guard, with Colonel Lannes in the lead, crosses the Po on the 7th of May, chasing off Austrian patrols that are the only opposition. By the next morning, most of La Harpe's and Augereau's divisions and the cavalry are across, consolidating the French bridgehead, while Massena and Serrurier move to the crossing as fast as they can. Men of General Liptay's division are the closest Austrian troops. They take up defensive positions at Fombio, but are overwhelmed by the French attack. That evening, Beaulieu's advance guard arrives, expecting to reinforce Liptay. Instead, they blunder into La Harpe's division. In confused night fighting, General La Harpe is shot dead, possibly by friendly fire. Napoleon regards him as one of the army's best generals, and his loss a great blow. Beaulieu, realizing that the French have crossed the Po in force and now threaten to cut him off, orders a rapid withdrawal east. Milan is to be sacrificed. The great fortress of Mantua will be his next refuge. The French advance guard is soon in pursuit. On the morning of the 10th of May, they catch the Austrian rearguard at Lodi. French troops chase the Austrians across town and over the town's 200-yard bridge over the River Adda. But when they try to follow, they find the bridge is swept by fire from 14 guns. Its far end is held by 3 battalions of Croatian infantry. Several more battalions and cavalry squadrons are behind them in reserve, around 6,500 men in total. Napoleon soon arrives and positions guns to bombard the Austrians on the far bank. An artillery duel rages for much of the afternoon. Napoleon sends Beaumont's cavalry brigade upstream to look for a ford so they can cross the river and flank the Austrian defences. But he grows impatient. Massena's division has begun to arrive from the south, bringing his strength up to 15,000 men and 30 guns. Napoleon makes a speech to the infantry, taunting them, daring them to take the bridge, then orders them forward. To cries of "Vive la République!" the hardened 2nd Carabinier Battalion leads the charge. They come under torrential fire from the Austrian guns. But urged on by Napoleon, Berthier, Massena, Lannes, and others, French infantry surge across, under, and around the bridge. Faced with this irresistible onslaught, the Austrian front line crumbles. And with French cavalry across the river to the north, the rest of the Austrian rearguard begins an orderly withdrawal.
Toast. Those are big words. Peoples.
5 days after his victory at Lodi, Napoleon leads his army into the city of Milan. They are welcomed by cheering crowds. Though in reality, Italians are deeply divided in their attitudes towards the French. After Lodi, French soldiers have a new nickname for their general, Le Petit Caporal, the Little Corporal. It's a term of affection because he gets his hands dirty, even aiming the guns himself, the job of an artillery corporal. In just a month, Napoleon has transformed a war-weary, disheveled and demoralized army into a victorious fighting force, brimming with esprit de corps eager for further conquests. While he, in his first campaign, has demonstrated extraordinary energy, mastery of detail, brilliant military intuition, above all, indomitable self-belief. It is this quality that inspires his soldiers to risk their lives for glory, for the Republic, and for the man they will one day acclaim their emperor. A big thank you to PMF Productions for their help creating this series and charting Napoleon's movements across northern Italy. We highly recommend their YouTube channel featuring their own detailed series on Napoleon's Italian campaigns, which you can find by searching PMF Productions or using the link in our video description. Thank you also to artist Keith Rocco for kind permission to use his artwork in this series. You can find more of Keith's brilliant Napoleonic art via the link in our video description. And thank you, of course, to all the Epic History TV Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Visit our Patreon page to find out how you can support our work, help choose future topics, and get ad-free early.
And shout out to Charles Nove on the narration there. Fire
he always
narration.
does such a good job.
Yeah, it's great. And crazy to see the difference, right? We obviously saw how he transformed the army as a whole, but it was crazy also just to see the fact that in the beginning we discussed how their conditions were not where they needed to be. He changed that, but there wasn't a lot of incentive to want to fight. And then he had them charging over a bridge, getting shot at by cannons a month later.
And then after they won that, they still had like a hunger for battle. They were saying.
Yeah. Well, because I guess you get a taste of it, and you just you want to
more.
keep going because you're winning, right? And that's what Napoleon said as well. They just need
testosterone.
They just need to taste victory, and they'll want more of it. And but I was just blown away just to see that transformation in such a short period of time. See him win such a magnitude in such a short period of time.
Complete 180. Like, that's crazy.
And this is the beginning, right? They mentioned there where he ends up becoming an emperor, which we haven't gotten to that point yet. But this is the beginning of that of evolution of who he's becoming. You're kind of seeing that right here. We talked about the political acumen. We talked about his leadership cues. He talked about his tactical awareness.
Yeah. Well, I think the terminology they use there that was really applicable is his intuition, like his battle intuition. Yeah. So
that was cool. I mean, I guess I can now see why you guys were telling us we need to go back and check this one out, because it definitely gives more insight on how he evolved into who he is or ends up becoming. Any thoughts that you want to add?
I thought it was like really cool to see this. I'm glad that we went back, and it just blows my mind like how someone so young can produce these outcomes. Like, usually when you think of like a really successful leader in battle, you think of somebody who has a lot of experience and like a lot of years under their belt, right? And also just like something that stands out to me too is that his self-belief, right? Like they had said he had just come off a long period of like being unemployed. So somebody going from like not even having a job to doing this, right? In a short span of time, it's crazy to not really get in yourself, like your head about yourself and be self-conscious and all of that of like, he could have been like, oh, I don't have a job because like they don't think I'm doing a job or whatever. But he was just like, no, I'm seizing the opportunity.
Yeah. It was also interesting to see Italy as a whole, segregated it to so many parts.
Yeah.
We know obviously Italy today as the country as it is, but at this time you had so many different ethnic groups vying for control over Italy.
But I was so segregated.
But I never really knew that was the case at the time. So
I'm part Italian and I had no clue.
There you go. So we all learned a little bit, hopefully, on this video. You guys included. If you did, make sure you hit the like button for us. As I said in the beginning, we'll probably come back to Napoleon soon. It won't be right away, but I definitely want to learn more about his journey. And it seems like this is part 1 of 5 of the Napoleon and Italy battles. So lots more to go, apparently. And this guy is just something else, though, the amount of battles he had. So we'll probably have a lot. He's also
like a master of speeches, eh?
Huh?
Like he's like a master of speeches.
An orator.
Yeah, like the things that he says to them to get them like fired up. Like he always finds the right words.
There you go. So looks like we'll have to come back to Napoleon in the future, guys. Have a great day. We'll see you on our next one.
Thanks for watching.